Hello, and welcome to today's presentation entitled Microphones. We're going to talk a little bit about the various types of microphones that are available out there, how those microphones work, and the directions in which they pick up sound. So hopefully by the end of this presentation you'll be able to have a little bit more solid grasp of an understanding on the topic of microphones. So a microphone is a type of transducer. You probably already know that a microphone picks up sound and transports it somewhere. A transducer, remember, is anything that transforms energy from one form to another. So a microphone actually takes acoustic energy and transforms it into electrical energy. We've talked about speakers a little bit. Speakers do the opposite of a microphone. Speakers take electrical energy and transform it into acoustical energy. So just kind of a reminder of what a transducer does. So a microphone takes that acoustic energy and makes it into electrical energy. Choosing microphones is probably one of the most artistic choices that you can make in the recording process. Every microphone is designed for a different application. Every microphone is going to have a different type of a sound. One mic, even though maybe they're both made for vocals, one mic might sound different than another simply because of the way they're manufactured and some of the characteristics that the manufacturer wants that microphone to have. So for instance, you wouldn't want to use a bass drum microphone on vocals. Or maybe you would. Maybe that's your creative choice. Maybe you wouldn't want to use a vocal mic on a snare drum. Or maybe you would. That's a creative choice. That's an artistic choice in the recording process. So just keep that in mind when choosing microphones. It's up to you, the engineer, what you want the microphones to sound like. So essentially there are three major types of microphones. There's the dynamic, the condenser, and the ribbon. You'll probably see dynamic and condenser microphones more than ribbon microphones. However, ribbons are still very common in the recording studio. So let's talk a little bit about dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are probably the simplest design, therefore probably the most durable microphone. I've actually seen dynamic microphones be thrown on the floor and they are picked up and they work perfectly. Dynamic mics are kind of your typical handheld mic that you see at concerts, things like that. They might have kind of like a cylindrical thing that the musician holds with a kind of a ball on the top. That is 9 times out of 10 a dynamic microphone, just to kind of give you a visual of what it might look like. The thing about dynamic mics is they can accept the highest level of SPL, or sound pressure level. So they don't really pick up super duper quiet sounds. They're going to pick up the sounds that are loud enough to deliberately be picked up. So you won't necessarily see them in the recording studio. Probably more in a live setting would be my primary suggestion for a dynamic microphone. They don't require separate power. That might not make much sense now, but you're going to see in a moment a type of microphone that actually takes another power source. But the thing to remember about dynamic microphones is they don't require separate power. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, dynamic mics are definitely more common in a live scenario, primarily because they can accept more volume without feeding back. So the way that dynamic microphones work, the principle is there is a magnetic coil wrapped around a magnet that creates the small electric current. You can see in the picture there, the sound source hits the diaphragm, causing that coil to move around that fixed magnet, sending an electrical current to the mixer or whatever it is that the microphone is hooked to. All right, the condenser microphone. Condenser microphones are absolutely more fragile than a dynamic microphone. The way the inner workings are is just a little bit more sensitive towards being bumped or jarred. They are typically used in recording settings because they have super duper high sensitivity. These are microphones that you don't even need to hold close to your mouth. They will pick up sounds that are very quiet. So that's why they're used in recording scenarios. Here is the external power requirement. Condenser microphones require 48 volts of external power, called phantom power. Most mixers will have phantom power built into them. However, if not, they do make phantom power that you can hook up to a mixer that might not have it. So, big thing to remember, condenser mics take separate power. So the way that condensers work is they operate by using two thin metal plates. One of the plates is charged with that 48 volts, and when sound hits that plate, it pushes it pushes against the other plate to create the signal. So partially because of that 48 volts that the microphone is getting, that is how they are so sensitive. And below there's kind of a picture of a cutaway of a condenser microphone. So the ribbon microphone you will probably see the least just in like home studios, recording studios, things like that. They're great. They sound awesome. However, they're very, very fragile. When I was in college, they wouldn't even let us touch these microphones without rubber gloves. So, they might not be appropriate for the beginning musician or even a working studio that has rowdy musicians that might come in and bump the mic, things like that. So just kind of a reason why you won't see them. They sound great, like we say, they work awesome, but condenser mics probably sound just as good as a ribbon microphone. Ribbon mics, they measure airflow. They work by suspending that thin metal strip in a magnetic field. So that's the ribbon that moves when air passes over it. This is the part that is so sensitive. That ribbon is what can be very, very easily damaged. So that is the inner workings of a ribbon microphone. So polar patterns essentially describe which direction a microphone will pick up sound from. There's three really probably pretty popular polar patterns: the cardioid, omnidirectional, and bidirectional. You will see more, however, these are the primary three. So cardioid, probably the most common of the polar patterns. What a cardioid microphone does is it picks up sound from only the front, kind of the sides, and rejects it from the rear. So a cardioid microphone is probably going to be most of your dynamic microphones. The reason for that is you want it to pick up the sound that it's pointing at, for instance, your mouth. So the sound from the back is rejected. It's not picking it up in a polar pattern. And if you look at the picture at the bottom there, that pattern kind of looks like a heart, and that's where the term cardioid comes from. Omnidirectionals pick up sound equally from all directions. So they're used in settings like meetings or classrooms, not usually in a recording setting or a live music setting, because they would pick up every sound from every direction. And finally, the bidirectional polar pattern is a polar pattern that picks up sound from the front and the back and rejects sound from the sides. So a situation where you might use this is maybe you have two vocalists and just one microphone, but you want to record both of those vocalists singing simultaneously. You'll set up a bidirectional microphone, and one person can sing on one side and another person can sing on another side, and it'll pick them both up at the same time. So that concludes my presentation on microphones. We talked about some of the basic microphone types, how they work, and the directional patterns in which they pick up sound from. I hope that you now know more about microphones, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.